And that next match was a surprise to me because I did not realize that, or I had forgotten about Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson as a Brainbusters. Um, when I saw them, coming in the ring, I was like, oh my God, that's Blanchard and Arn. Um,
Easily one of the best tag teams ever.
yeah. Of course, Bobby Heenan was with them. And that whole thing led up, of course, they were fighting, I don't know, Strike Force. Santana and Rick Martel.
Mm-hmm.
And
where Rick Martel turns heel and goes on that, I don't want to call it a monster run, but he had a very solid run as the model.
yeah, the model Rick Martel kept spraying because the very next year at the WrestleMania, he was doing the whole this bug spray can, the old timey bug spray can.
Yep.
I remember it's one of the things that kind of a little funny, but he kept on, Jesse the Body kept on referring to Tito Santana as Chico Santana many, many times. And then, then Monsoon, threw it out there inadvertently, well, he said something about Chico. I said, well, Chico's doing, this, like, his name is Tito. Yeah.
I heard that Tito did not particularly care for that, being called Chico.
Probably not. It was kind of, I don't think you pull that stuff off today. He, politically incorrect, I guess.
Yeah.
In a way. But yeah, he inadvertently hit Martel. He inadvertently hit Martel in the cheek. One of his patented moves, elbow smash or something.
The flying forearm that Jesse Ventura always called the flying burrito.
Yeah. But of course, Martel was out there at the side holding his cheek the whole time, and eventually just waved his hand and walked off. And of course, they beat the crap out of Tito after that.
Yeah. And thus giving Tito his fourth consecutive loss at WrestleMania at that time. But Tito was one of the mainstays. He really was. He was one of the few guys that would first come to mind when you think of the WWF at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, he was around for a while.
But it was good to see Arn Anderson and Tully winning at WrestleMania, because as far as tag teams go, you don't get much better than those two.
Yeah. And those are old school wrestlers. Yeah.
Yes. And then on the next match, you go really old school with Andre the Giant and Jake Roberts with Big John Studd as the referee.
That was a pretty decent match. Snake did come out on that. I'm trying to think of how that all transpired. Somebody come and got it. On to the back. Yeah, on to the back, and of course it beat him up, and then got the Snake. That was a double DQ, wasn't it, or a double count out?
And it was a nice callback with Andre and Studd because of their match at WrestleMania 1.
Right. That was wasn't it the body slamming match here with the body slam the other?
Yep.
Yeah.
And while Andre and Studd were distracted with each other while Jake was coming out, Bobby, I think, took the turnbuckle off,
Mm-hmm.
and Andre went right after Jake and threw him in there. And that's where Gorilla and Jesse were panicking. Hey, where'd the turnbuckle go?
Yeah. So I guess they had already prearranged that during the, before the match. It's like, all right, take the turnbuckle off, and we'll start the match off like that. And of course, I think Jake took one off also in that, didn't he? Or maybe no,
No.
he threw Andre into that same one
Yeah, I think so.
later in the match. Jake Roberts was probably my second favorite wrestler of all time.
Yeah.
Just his whole demeanor and the way did promos.
Oh, he was a master at ring psychology.
Yeah.
And a master at getting the attention of the fans. He was one of very few wrestlers who did not need to raise his voice at all.
Right. He was. I used to watch him back in Mid-South, and I keep going Mid-South because it's just my thing. He had feuds with Terry Taylor. First time I ever saw, at that time it was like extreme. Of course, he had a run with, he had a feud with Adrian Street back in the day. No, it was Terry Taylor. Take it back, it was Terry Taylor. But I remember in DDT and Terry Taylor on a steel chair, and it was like back in that day, it was like, oh my God.
Well, what always got me with Jake, the way that his boots were, with the snake scales all the way up and down them,
Mm-hmm.
always made his legs look much longer than they were. To me, they did.
He had, this was back before WWF, but back in the day, he had, his wrestling pants were Century Martial Arts pants. You look back on some of the old videos, you can see the Century logo on his pants pocket.
I remember that because that's what he wore at WrestleMania 2.
Okay. He had a big feud with Lord Humongous, which was another Humongous back in that time. That's when the Hockey Masters wrestler with the Hockey Masters first came on the scene, and he was having a feud with him, and Humongous would bust Jake open with headbutts just all the time, and then Jake started carrying a bag to some of the matches, and like, what is this? But you expected a snake compared to what you see now, but it was actually a different hockey mask that he put on to coincide against Humongous.
Yeah.
And he was the first one that kicked out from the DDT. The DDT to me had that mask on, and it didn't phase me, got up. And then there was he was getting having Humongous one time, and Sir Oliver Humperdinck was a manager of Humongous back then, and he wound up taking the mask off of Jake and started beating him down again, and blood just pouring down his face, and he was tag teaming with the Barbarian at this time. Jake was, and he come running down there, and then you see Humongous and Barbarian face to face each other, and just like, oh my God, this is so freaking cool. They're fixing to tie into it, and they wound up turning on Jake and just beat the crap out of him even more. It's like, oh man, that could have been so good. But I don't remember the Barbarian being around long after that.
Probably right before they all went to WWF.
Yeah, Jake and the Barbarian, this when MTV was still playing music, they were putting out little music videos. They did one with Al Perez and Wendell Cooley. And then they did one for Jake Roberts and Barbarian, and it's what got me into the music that I listen to now. Is they did a video with "Lay It Down" by Rat, and they did a video montage of them in ring performance with that song, and I was like, that's a really cool song. So found out what it was, got the album, and it's like, man, this music is really good.
Another cool thing about Jake Roberts is that he's the one who came up with the name Legion of Doom.
Really?
Yeah. The Road Warriors, before they came to the WWF and changed their name to Legion of Doom, in the NWA, the Road Warriors, Jake Roberts, and someone else were in their own little stable, and Jake came up with the name Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom got on the scene with WWF. It was like, they had the big shoulder pads with the spikes and all on it. Like,
they had that before they even went to.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to see where it is. Legion of Doom. It doesn't say.
While you're looking at
Here it is. Road Warriors, Jake Roberts, King Kong Bundy, and the Spoiler.
who was the spoiler?
Donald Jardine. So they were the original Legion of Doom.
And I wonder if it's a take on the old DC Super Friends cartoon. You had the Justice League, and you had the Legion of Doom, which was the bad guys.
It is.
Bad guys hideout.
It is. Animal reveals in the Road Warriors DVD that the name Legion of Doom was taken from the Super Friends cartoon. Yep.
Meanwhile, the Legion of Doom.
And one thing that I don't understand about this, with John Studd being the referee, is that he had just run the Royal Rumble a couple months prior. And they were looking at him having a big face run. So at some point between WrestleMania or Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, they decided that it's not going to work.
I wonder if it has something to do maybe health-wise or...
Let's see here. Studd's last match with the WWF was in June of '89. So just 2 months later, he'd be gone. But yeah, but nothing.
Jake wound up winning that by DQ. Kind of going back before that, between the Brainbusters and the Andre and Jake match, there was a segment on there with Brother Love and Piper and Robert Downey Jr. that went on forever. Good Lord, went on forever.
Yeah, that was Piper's return after having been gone for 2 years. He had been making movies in Hollywood.
And Bruce Pritchard, to his thing, he's like, he did pretty good impersonation of Piper.
He did. He did. And having Morton Downey Jr., to me, that just seemed like it was out of place.
Yeah, yeah. He was the equivalent of Jerry Springer, back in the day. If you remember Jerry Springer, of course, Jerry Springer, that show's been.
I remember Jerry Springer, but I don't ever remember seeing Morton Downey Jr.
Yeah, he did a little talk show. It was, I guess, around Geraldo time. But anyway, your next match is Hart Foundation versus Greg the Hammer Valentine and Honky Tonk Man. Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart. Yeah. That match lasted 7 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, there is something else we did skip over.
What's that?
I think it was for the Dino Bravo Ronnie Garvin match. Right before they rang the bell for them two to fight, they introduced Jimmy Snuka.
That's right, they did. He come out there and did a little show face.
It was his first appearance in almost 4 years for them.
They did the same thing with Jesse in the middle of the show too.
Yep, they did that. That wasn't quite as prominent as the one for Jimmy Snuka was.
Oh no.
But he always did something for the fans at each of the WrestleManias that he had been in. Jesse did. Like whether he did a pose down, and then he actually accompanied somebody to the ring at WrestleMania 3, I think.
Yeah, WrestleMania 3, of course, was the big Andre and Hogan match. The next thing that really stood out to me was Jake Roberts with coming in the ring with Alice Cooper.
Oh, that was something, and that was a perfect fit.
Yeah. He looked so, and that was back during his heavy drinking days. Talking about Alice Cooper.
And the placing of that match when everything is all dark, that was the only way to do that.
Yeah, that was. I'm trying to think of who he fought. Did he fight Macho during that?
Jake Roberts.
Rude.
That would have been Honky Tonk Man.
That's right. Yeah, I remember Alice Cooper having the snake towards the end of the match, and Jake grabbed it from him and about pulled Alice Cooper down on the ground.
So the next match is the Hart Foundation against Greg Valentine and the Honky Tonk Man. This is before they turned into Rhythm and Blues.
That was after, WrestleMania 3 when Honky Tonk lost the title to Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, Honky Tonk lost the title the year prior. And to me, this match pairing was like a classic.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great match, but to me, this was a classic match. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you got the Hart Foundation there. You got Bret Hart and
yeah, they're going to put on a good match anyway. Greg Valentine's going to put on a good match. Honky wasn't the best.
And Greg Valentine had been around for a while at this point in time.
Yeah. Hart Foundation got the win, 7.5 minutes. It wasn't a great match. It was okay. let's see. I think for Brett that he won almost every WrestleMania match he's had. He won more than he lost. And this one here seemed like it was just too short because when it comes to somebody like Greg Valentine, you need 10 minutes just to get him warmed up.
Yeah. That whole, I guess, Jimmy Hart era where he had, several of these tag teams and the wrestlers in his faction, I guess you'd call it. He always he was always a good manager as far as getting involved. I remember, the Hart Foundation versus British Bulldogs. They had a big feud going for a while. But yeah, that was 7 minutes. So 7:40. Yeah, 7 minutes 40 seconds. It's definitely a lot longer than the Bushwhackers. Yeah, a couple minutes longer. And the Rockers went 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Your next match was
The Intercontinental title.
Rick Rude versus Warrior. Now I wonder why, looking back at it and seeing the matches that came after that, I wonder why they wouldn't have put that match next to right before Hogan and Mancho.
Well, they needed to say Bobby for last. They needed to say Bobby's match last. That just reminds me something. Remember I was talking about the trips? Bushwhacker Butch, when he tripped down that step. Mr. Perfect tripped, and Bret Hart also tripped on that same spot. And you can see Rene Goulet, one of the producers, he's standing there at that spot, and you can see him on camera pointing to let these guys coming down know, hey, there's a step down here, and all three of them miss it. And you can see the smirk in Bret Hart's face. Oh yeah, dummy me! I almost tripped. I almost fell in front of 20,000 people.
Yeah. So I didn't catch any of that. I was trying to think of what I was doing while I was watching. I was doing something I was watching.
And then the Warrior, he just sprints on down there. He completely
Missed the whole thing anyway. Yeah.
He could have had a bad fall from that one. But yeah, Warrior and Rick Rude. This was Bobby's last match as a manager before he had his own match. That was the fourth longest match of the night. Jake Roberts and Andre actually went longer than that one.
Yeah, the Rick Rude and Warrior match was, for what it was, it was pretty decent.
It was decent. And it made sense for it to end the way that it did.
Mm-hmm. See, I didn't realize that Warrior had lost that match. I wrote down a W on my sheet, my note sheet here. And then I was like, oh crap! It's like I didn't realize he had lost it. I thought he had won it and kept it until him and Hogan wrestled.
No, he lost it and then he won it back at SummerSlam. And then he went on to beat Hogan.
It's like And there's no cables touching anything. I don't know what's going on. But
Maybe your camera's going bad.
it's fairly new. Of course, I got it from Timo. Timo, what do we call it? It wasn't very expensive at all. It was like, I don't know, $3 or $4.
Well, maybe after we're done, you unplug it and plug it back in.
See, when I first came on the show today, I had it plugged into a different port on my computer, and I cooked up the Cat 5 cable coming from my modem straight into here because I usually keep it for my Xbox.
Yeah.
I got it right here. And I said, well, I'm going to go and plug this in so I'm not working on Wi-Fi on the computer. And when I did that, the camera went on because I was already in the backstage. It's like, what the heck is going on now? And I checked this, I was plugged in, and I took it out of there and plugged it somewhere else, and then it came back up. So maybe the camera's going out. Maybe I'm hitting the cord with this other cord, maybe I'm bumping it. Maybe.
Well, you'll have a week and a half to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I got a laptop that it's in getting a new hard drive put in it. Long story there, but hopefully I'll have a laptop soon that I can actually carry around with me.
Now, taking the belt off of Warrior and putting it on Rude, I don't know if it was for this specific instance, but I remember when Bruce Pritchard was talking about how they did the title changes and such. One of the things that stuck to me that he said is that Vince was never a fan of having the world champion and the intercontinental champion being both faces.
I can see that.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if that was for this particular case or not. But Rick Rude deserved a title run, I thought. And what's always unique about Rick was that his tights were always painted something different.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular instance, he had the Intercontinental titles
Already on there.
And then Warrior on the back.
Yeah. When he feuded with Jake Roberts, he had Jake's wife on his butt. Yeah. And that's when you started seeing Warrior change a little bit with his outfit. He had more the airbrushed, stuff on his outfit.
He did.
Of course, back in the 80s, that was a big thing back there, the airbrush stuff.
Yeah, this was right around the time where Warrior started really coming out on his own and probably bulking up more than what he was.
Yeah, back in that day, they had supplements that they used. Even Hogan, I heard, back in the day.
Yeah. So.
Rick, one guy that reminds me of Rude is back in the Attitude Era was Val Venus. Kind of that same, ladies look at me type thing, and I always liked Val's character.
I did too, but he just didn't quite have that touch that Rick did.
Right. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them, give him a little title run, even if it's Intercontinental or whatever. Val Venus. But I don't think that ever happened.
He did have a title run.
Did he?
I think he was the European champion.
And the back is stiffening it up from this morning.
Oh, he was the Intercontinental Champion twice,
Okay.
European
Okay.
champion, and he was a tag team champion.
Okay.
So he did get some
Okay.
titles.
Okay.
Yeah. Next match, Bad News Brown versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I saw an interview with Jim Duggan not too long ago, and he said that this match was basically a thrown together match for this event.
Yeah, and it looks like it.
Yeah,
3 minutes, 41 seconds. Wasn't very long at all.
no,
Um,
ended in a double disqualification.
yeah, and that's probably, the easiest way to, if you're going to throw a match together like that with these two guys, easiest way to end a match. You ain't got to worry about it ending. Just fight outside until we get DQ.
This was probably just put together to get both of them on to WrestleMania.
Probably, all right, we need something in between Bobby Heenan, with Rude, and then Bobby Heenan, his match. And it's like, all right, let's put you two guys there. That'll give him time to get backstage and do what he's got to do before he comes out.
Which wasn't enough time for Bobby.
No, he didn't last 31 seconds.
That's all he lasted.
31 seconds.
So there was a storyline going in with Bobby Heenan and the Red Rooster, and we neglected to say that Jake Roberts and Andre the Giant was another match that had a long storyline into that match. Now with Bobby Heenan and Red Rooster, I don't really know how long that one was going, but the payoff for that just was very lackluster, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't nothing much to that.
Yeah. To me, it would have made more sense for the Brooklyn Brawler to be fighting Rooster. At least that would have given him a pay-per-view match, because he's never had one.
Really?
He had done a lot of dark matches for pay-per-views, but never an actual pay-per-view match. So really nothing to Bobby Heenan and Red Rooster. And that would be the last time that we would see him for the night after, let's see, he was out there for Haku Hercules, Strike Force, and Brainbusters. Then immediately after that, Jake and Andre.
Was it part of the Twin Towers?
No, that was Slick.
Okay, that's right.
And then Rick Rude and Ultimate Warrior. So Bobby Heenan made 5 appearances at WrestleMania 5.
I bet he was tired. Let's just get in here and whip my ass and let me go home.
I'm sure it was, especially after getting body slammed by the Warrior the way that he did.
Yeah.
And then you come to the main event.
And that was built up. It did a little intro, or they did a little pre-match video where it's showing what things led up to them two colliding and separating and 9 yards. Storyline, what got us here. And really, that was
A year.
the only one you saw. Leading up to the match, catching everybody up.
That was the whole point of WrestleMania 5, was Hogan and Savage.
It's like, this is our main event. Let's put this other stuff together and not really worry about it.
That's why to me it had that boxing event feeling. Is that last match is the only one that really mattered.
Right.
Um, and even the look, Hogan in yellow tights, Savage in orange. It, even just that look of what these guys were wearing, it tells you that this is the big one.
Yeah. I remember Elizabeth coming down in a neutral corner. Of course, it was a mixture of her not really getting involved, but getting involved
Yeah. Um,
until the point where they sent her to the back.
and and also another thing that happened that I don't think most people really thought of, but Jesse Ventura talked about it. He was asking why did Randy Savage come out first? Because this is the first
Yeah.
time. This is the first time on pay per view that the champion came out first.
Yeah, it made no sense traditionally what you would do.
Right.
And you know, just knowing that, you probably like, well, they're pushing Hogan as being the, you know, Macho's here and you know Hogan's up here,
Yeah.
you know, type thing.
Yeah. Hogan is always on top, no matter which way you look at it.
Yeah,
Um, and there was no question that even though this here was, in my opinion, the second biggest WrestleMania match up to that point,
hmm
Savage was never going to be on the same level as Hogan.
no, and he had some great runs back in the day with Steamboat and Jake Roberts,
Oh, he did.
Georgie Animal Steel. Um, I saw an interview. I was watching some documentary. And I saw Georgie Animal Steel talking, you know, giving a little interview, and I was like, "Good Lord, he's talking normal," you know, because you never really heard him talk other than a few syllables, you know, back when he was biting turnbuckles and had the blue or green tongue, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think maybe the reason Savage came out first, as opposed to Hogan being the biggest star, is that they had Savage come out and then have Elizabeth come out after him. And then Hogan.
it would make more sense the way you set that up as opposed to Hogan coming out and then Elizabeth, then Macho, because then it would look more like she's with Hogan and she has Macho.
Right.
So yeah, I could see that.
And the match itself was really good. It was really good. Um, and I noticed little things in that match that I saw was carried into other things like the 2K games. You know how a lot of times when you watch them, you see the one guy do elbow drop, and then does the rake with the foot.
hmm
That came from Hogan at WrestleMania 5.
Okay.
He did that to Savage. Um, and then there was, I remember when I first started watching wrestling and Wrestling Challenge would come on, they would have the intro. It had, at the end of that intro, Hogan was Savage in his arms, throwing him over the top rope
hmm
to the floor. That came from WrestleMania 5.
Let me. Back in that day, was it that an illegal thing? Because you know, back early on, it was always a disqualification to throw
Ne-
you over the top rope.
Never in the WWF.
No.
I know that WCW had that rule at one time, and I think the UWF did too. Oh, and AWA did. But far as I know, WWF has never had that.
You know, and you look back at matches back then, any kind of outside usage of a chair or a turnbuckle or not turnbuckle, but a ring post or, you know, slam them on anything else is like, you know, that's a DQ. You know, now it's like, you know, that's all legit. You can throw them in the steps, you can throw them in the ring corner, you can
Yeah,
throw
that
them
was,
to an announce table, you know.
there was another interesting moment here. They were outside. Hogan had Savage on his shoulder, and he was going to ram him into the post. Elizabeth gets in between them.
Yep.
Then Savage jumps down, and he pushes Hogan into the post. And almost pushing him into Elizabeth as well.
Right.
Finally, the referee has had enough, tells Savage go back into the ring and tells Elizabeth to go back.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here.
And that's a good way to, you know, set up for your ending.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because how are you going to have her? Because her and Macho were still, you know, in that storyline at ends. You know, Macho was more, you know, didn't want her out there. So, you know, it would make more sense to go ahead and just, all right, let her go into the back and then y'all can finish up and, you know, you ain't got that awkwardness of her trying to get Randy, you know, to the back.
Right.
Or even celebrating with Hogan. So.
Yeah, that would have been real awkward. And then to finish the match, Savage does his elbow. Then Hogan does his Hulk up.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always noticed, people always dragging on his leg drop being the finisher, saying that it's the dumbest finisher of all time and all that. Every time I see Hogan do his leg drop, there's always something there that separates his leg drop from everyone else's leg drop.
He gets more airtime than a regular leg drop.
Yes. And the camera view, at least for this event, when he drops the leg drop on Savage, one, you don't actually see the contact because everybody has their cameras flashing at that moment. Mm-hmm. The entire screen flashes at that second. But yeah, he does get more airtime in, so that gives him that little more oomph. And that's 300 pounds of man landing on your face. You get up after that. I know I'm not going to.
Yeah. You know, and at that point in time, it's like, maybe not so much there, but, you know, when the next WrestleMania comes around, it's like, you know, we're pushing for Warrior. And then that whole match just getting concluded, like, hulking up, like same old finish. You know, why can't you just let, you know, Warrior win it and all that? But, you know, of course, we know Warrior wound up kicking out and wound up splashing him and pinning him, and Hogan kicked out right at like 3.5 or 3.25 during that match. So, I mean, the ending for that match was really good.
It was. And this match here was really, really good too. And a lot of that has to do with Savage, because I don't really recall seeing a bad Randy Savage match.
And, you know, and Randy's, you think about the same thing too, is, you know, his elbow drop. You know, well, it's just an elbow drop. You know, but Randy had that, it's like he hung in the air for a couple seconds before he landed.
Yeah.
It was always a good good finisher, especially getting on the turnbuckle, stand there for a second, just, doing that before he jumps.
I don't recall anybody jumping off the top rope with the elbow drop before Savage did.
I don't remember.
After him, I saw plenty do it, but not before him.
Yeah. It was like, some of your finishing moves back then are now just mixed in the matches with, all your other moves. Take for instance like the DDT. Everybody does the DDT now, but it's just a mix of everything else. And now they got variations of it. So many.
There was a time when just a regular body slam was a finisher.
Yeah.
So as time goes on, so do the moves.
Yeah. And you got so many different moves that are called different things. You got the diamond cutter, the stunner, RKO.
Yeah.
It's just like same movie, just called something different.
Just call it what it is. The neck breaker. Or whatever. But yeah, Hogan and Savage easily one of the all-time classics.
Yeah. You
And
didn't have a lot of time to build up Randy as the heel in there, but you automatically knew. Same thing with Hogan and Andre.
that match didn't have a whole lot of build-up time. Hogan and Savage, I think they were building that from WrestleMania 4. I think they built that one up for the whole year without us really realizing it.
Right. And the storyline with them teaming up and tagging together, and then Elizabeth, and the mixture of all that, and that whole storyline worked really well to build up for WrestleMania 5.
Yeah. And then it continued on beyond 5. It went into SummerSlam that year. And then they did that little one-off pay-per-view for No Holds Barred in between Survivor Series and Royal Rumble.
When did Zeus come in?
That would have been right after WrestleMania 5.
Okay. I
About
remember.
a month after.
Okay.
Because that was when the movie came out.
Right.
And they stretched that one on for several months.
You're still on that thing?
All in all, for what it was in the time, I mean, it's WrestleMania. What you say?
Yeah.
A lot different back then than it is now, where you have a lot of great matches in WrestleManias now compared to back then when you just had like this one. You had a lot of fillers. It seems like
A lot of filler matches.
right. And when I first started watching this, it was like, and I started writing down match 1, match 2. It's like, gosh dang, how many matches do they have? I'm all the way to the Bruce Pritchard's segment, and I'm like, good Lord, how many matches have we got left? It's like, good Lord, there's 14 matches. I was like,
I know I was doing the same thing when I was watching these matches here, and I'm looking over here on Wikipedia. Okay, 6 more matches after this.
yeah, it's like, my God, it's like they just keep on coming out before the Hogan and Macho come out. It's like, good Lord, it's a big pay-per-view, long pay-per-view.
It was, and they wanted to get as many of the guys on there as they possibly could, which I get it. It's the biggest event of the year. But for what it is, I find WrestleMania 5 to be very enjoyable.
I enjoy it. It took me back to, you know, back in those days, just a lot different than what you see now.
Yes. And when you think about all of the WrestleMania main events, after 40 of them, Hogan and Savage at worst in the top 10.
Yeah, I just pulled up 6 to see how it compared to 5. There is one dark match.
And then 14 matches after that.
Right. Uh, Jimmy Snuka was in there.
Mhm.
We get through. Might be a thing to do is get through Backlash on the next show, and then maybe do a review on 6.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing one on 6.
Maybe we'll just start a trend.
I would also like to do some WCW and ECW pay-per-views as well.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Because I mean, here lately is well, let me get go. Mainly we talk about what's going on in WWE.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the other ones.
I-
And WCW would definitely be ones to talk about. Because I mean, back in the '90s, 2000s, I guess 2000 had. It's like we had a pay-per-view every month.
Yeah, I would definitely like to go back into the nostalgia and watch how things used to be. Like for me, my favorite WCW era was mid '94 to mid '95. That was my favorite time in WCW. And this is before the NWO stuff started out.
Right.
I enjoyed that too, but there was something about '94 and '95 that to me it was really special.
It was a big production, but it wasn't WE production
Right.
like you see now. So it was more, I guess, more not really personal, but more. Um, yeah, I guess it would be more personal because it's a lot smaller venue, a lot smaller crowd. Compared to now.
Yeah, compared to now. I would say that the crowds then, at least on pay-per-view, were comparable to what WWF's pay-per-views were at that time too. The TV shows, not so much because I know that a couple of them they were doing it at the MGM Graham, where you had 3 sides of an audience, and then that whole one side was nothing but cameras.
Right.
They did that on Worldwide, Saturday night, main event.
And see, I remember going to a couple. There was a group that came in here. It's been several years back, but they were trying to work a televised old school wrestling show. And I remember going to a couple of tapings, and they had everybody seated, all the way around this way, nobody back here. So yeah, it didn't last very long. Though.
Yeah, I would have definitely liked to have gone to a WCW show at some point, but never did.
I went to one I know of when they were in Jackson. That's back in the Woodpack days, and I wound up getting K-Dog's autograph after the show. Back. But yeah, me and my uncle had nosebleed seats. It was I mean, you took pictures, but you couldn't see who was who in the ring. But you could see the match, and it was decent. But after that event, I was like, I will never sit in the nosebleed seats again. I said, if I'm going to go and get ringside, I may pay a little bit more, but I'm going to get as close as I possibly can. And I've been to a few of the live shows, house shows. I'd say probably 3 or 4. Seen Batista when he was just getting a tattoo down on his back. It was part of Evolution. And he was, man, that was a huge human being back then.
Yeah.
You fell out of the ring and fell close to where we were. And I remember saying, he was, kind of acting like he's hurt and all that. So, man, that's a cool tattoo because he had just got the ink on the back, the outline. I said, man, that's a cool tattoo. So, thank you. And he goes back in the ring. But, yeah, those are a lot of fun.
And I just missed a WWE show last week.
Yeah, they had one up in Memphis not long ago, but it was the tickets were so outrageous. I was like, "There's no way I can pay that kind of money."
There were some tickets here that were $20 and $40. I could have easily have gone, but this was right when I first started getting sick.
Yeah, and I guess it would be not so bad now sitting up in the higher seats because you got the big screens and everything. You can actually see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot better than opposed to years ago where you have to squint or use binoculars to see what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
Well, here at the Coliseum that we have, there is no bad seat anywhere, even if you're in the cheap ones. You've got a great view no matter where you're at.
well, I've been to a few concerts. Now it's a lot different. And now they got the stage, and you got camera, or you got video screens on both sides of the stage, and you got some way up up top, and you can see really good no matter where you're sitting. We're going to, a couple buddies of mine from the fire department. We're going to see Oreo and 38 Special and Oreo Speedwagon tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, Wednesday, yeah. At the Brandon Amphitheater, and it's I've been to the amphitheater when we took the kids to see Christmas lights and all. We had a big drive-through Christmas light show. We stopped in there, and they had a couple little things there for the kids to do, take pictures of Santa and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there looking at this like, this is, if you had a concert here, which they do hold concerts here regularly, like, there's not a bad seat in this place. I mean, it's that small that even if you're sitting, way up, which we are, we're sitting way up, and the thing's like, you're really close to the stage. And I've been to Alice Cooper, and I watched Prize with Alice Cooper years ago, and we were sitting up in the balcony seats, and it was a good show. Good, you could see everything.
Yeah.
So I try to get on the floor now. And that's me. Especially when I go see Striper, I want to be closest to the thing that I possibly can. I'm getting old and I can't see good.
Fair enough.
But,
All right, so WrestleMania 5, I enjoyed it. Hogan and Savage is definitely, to me, one of the top 10 in main events, especially when you look at the name marquee.
mm-hmm.
Because Randy Savage is one of the tops.
Always been a good performer.
Yes.
Always.
And even though most people will disagree, Hulk Hogan is better than most people give him credit for.
Yeah, he's, he put wrestling on the map,
He did.
as it is now. I mean, like him or hate him, dislike him, whatever everybody knows who Hogan is. Everybody knows who The Rock is. Those big names, just like you never watched wrestling, you knew who Hulk Hogan was.
Yes, you did.
Um,
He was all over the place. He was on Sports Illustrated. He was in movies. He was everywhere.
yeah, some movies he should not have been in. I think wasn't that great, but and I've heard stories of how what's the word I'm looking for? Not a team player a lot of times. Trying to keep his foot in the limelight, the top, keeping himself up in there and not really caring too much
Yeah.
about the new guys coming in. And I guess that's for par through the years. The good thing about the way they're going now is like, these top tier guys are actually talking and working with the other younger groups coming in and giving them pointers and tips and, which is smart. You're not going to be around forever. If you want to really, really love the business, you got to groom those younger guys that are coming in that are going to take your place one day. If you're going to keep the lineage going.
And most of the wrestlers today are in a lot better shape than the wrestlers that we just watched in WrestleMania V. Although they weren't necessarily in bad shape to begin with, but
No.
today's wrestlers are in better conditioned.
And they take care of themselves more than back then.
Yeah.
As far as eating right and exercising every day, and
And don't forget, steroids were pretty popular back then too.
right.
We could probably do a whole show on that one alone.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been at this for
2 hours and 12 minutes. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and wrap it up before your camera craps out on you.
Yeah, I got a couple of things I got to do before I go to class tonight, so still got 4 hours of class to teach tonight.
So once again, I was telling myself all morning that I was going to say this maybe about every 10 minutes that this is a pre-tape show.
Pre-show.
Yeah. It's only the second time mentioning this since the start.
Yeah, and I guess it's a little late to say, we're planning on watching the replay of this show, and if anybody's, watching and asking comments and, ask questions and comments on the show itself when it airs, I'll try to be there to, comment or answer back.
Yep, I will have it on all of the Martial and Wrestling pages, all of the Universal Network, Wrestling Network pages, and the Select Things Network pages. So,
Okay.
All right. Well, that's why I say thank you to the audience for playing along, but we didn't have an audience.
Thanks for viewing. Thanks for viewing this replay. You enjoy it. Thanks for all the comments and questions if you've got some that you asked during this.
Yeah. And remember, this show was done before Backlash, so we have no idea what happened yesterday.
Right.
But we will do a review on that one, I guess, next week.
Yeah. We'll get it all scheduled, and like we said before, maybe a good idea to start doing something once a week, and even if it's pre-recorded, at least we get something out there every week.
Yeah, I would like to. All righty. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and we will see everybody later.
All right. So y'all enjoy, I guess you would have enjoyed Backlash.
Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah. See ya.